To make working on your cascading style sheets even easier, Dreamweaver CS4 now allows you to edit and create CSS directly from the Properties Inspector. Essentially, Dreamweaver now has two property inspectors, accessible by either choosing the HTML or the CSS tab. The CSS tab allows you to modify a targeted rule based on the focus on the page or to create a new rule based on the formatting options selected. Even better, formatting text through the Properties Inspector no longer creates automatically named embedded class styles. While not designed to fully replace the CSS styles panel in your workflow, having your CSS accessible from the Properties Inspector will speed up the process of editing and creating styles. So I've got my blog.html page open here, and I'm going to collapse my panels down to icons so I have a little bit more screen real estate. I can see right off the bat that the first blog posting doesn't have the same formatting as the rest of my blog postings, and I want to make the two match. So I'm going to do that on the Properties Inspector. Now, every time you want to do styling, you don't necessarily have to switch to the CSS tab. For example, the HTML tab still allows me to apply ID and class attributes. So I'm going to select the parent div tag that my blog post is in, and I'll use the Properties Inspector to assign the blog entry class attribute. As soon as I do that, everything inside of it styles exactly the way that I was anticipating. Now, let's examine editing CSS through the Properties Inspector. Although the CSS Properties Inspector lists the targeted rule based on your current focus, you also have access to the full cascade of rules applying to your element. You could choose to create an entirely new rule, or you have the ability to apply a class. So I'm going to click over here in the dates on my sidebar. And once I'm focused on them, I'm going to go down and click on the CSS tab inside my Properties Inspector. So now we can see the font, the size, and the color that's being applied to our text. However, you shouldn't make the assumption that all of those are coming from the same selector. If I hover over each one of those, I get a tooltip that comes up that tells me exactly which rule that property is coming from. Now, once I know that, it's easy to change it using the Targeted Rule pull-down menu. So using the Targeted Rule pull-down menu, notice that I can apply a class. I can choose to create a new CSS rule or a new inline style. Now, for those of you that are creating HTML emails, the new inline style will be a welcome addition. Or I can use the cascade to target a specific rule and then make a change. So I'm going to target the specific ULLI rule, come down and change the color to #999 and hit return. You can see that it changed that specific rule because I was targeting it. Now, targeting this rule also allows me to edit it as well. Let's say we wanted to change a property that I didn't have access to directly here on the Properties Inspector. Targeting the rule with the Targeting Rule pull-down menu and then clicking on the Edit rule brings up my CSS rule definition dialog box, giving me the same options to edit this rule as I would have through my CSS styles panel. Well, I want a little bit more space between these, so I'm going to go to my box category and go ahead and give them a bottom margin of 5 pixels. When I click OK, now that I can see I have increased spacing between them, and that's exactly what I was looking for. Now, you can create rules to the Properties Inspector using one of two methods. You can select text that does not have a specific rule applied to it and just begin formatting, or you can choose to create a new rule directly from the Targeted Rule pull-down menu. So let's say we wanted to create a class selector that's going to allow us to highlight really important passages of text. So I can highlight some text. And you can see in my Properties Inspector, the targeted rule now says New CSS Rule because it knows that there's no one rule driving that selected text. So I can choose Edit Rule. I'm going to choose to apply a class selector, and we'll name it Highlight. Now, notice how intelligent Dreamweaver is being here. It saw that I highlighted a range of text, and it said, well, for that, you probably need a class. I can also choose exactly where this rule is going to be written. In this case, I'm going to write it to my external CSS document and click OK. Now, we'll create a really simple rule here. I'm going to switch to the background category, and I'll just do a yellow background color. I'll click OK. And when I click off of it, I can see that I've created my new class. And of course, I can highlight additional text, use the Targeted Rule pull-down menu to go ahead and apply that class to that text as well. So it really serves a lot of purposes. Now, the majority of your CSS-based tasks will still likely be handled through the CSS Styles panel. However, taking advantage of the Property Inspector's ability to do minor edits and basic formatting, as well as using its ability to isolate and focus on a selected element, is going to dramatically speed up your day-to-day CSS-based workflow.